So welcome everyone to our third alumni career chat for the fall 2021 semester. My name is Samantha Bruto. I'm the Career Services Coordinator here at Marxe Career Services, and I'm joined with Suzanne Grossman, who is the Deputy Director of Career Services and Alumni Relations. I'm happy to have our fellow HEA alumna and Baruch College Chief of Staff, Kenya Lee, join us today. Kenya is up here. Yes, there she is. Awesome. Sorry. All good. So yes, I'm going to put us into speaker mode. Wonderful. So thank you, Kenya, for joining us. We are so excited to have you. So please, as always, kick us off. Tell us about your journey to your current position as Baruch Chief of Staff and how the HEA program has sort of helped you in that process.
Okay, wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I tripped into higher education. I didn't go to college thinking I want to be a higher education administrator. I actually had gotten a degree in English literature, creative writing with this grand vision of going into magazine publishing, which I did. I did graduate. I did get a job in magazine publishing. I was there for a few years, and then 9/11 happened, and the publishing industry, was pretty much devastated by the aftermath of that occurrence, among a lot of other things that happened. And so I found myself needing to shift gears. And so I ended up getting a job in higher education, actually at the CUNY Graduate Center, working within one of the administrative offices in, I think they call it information resources there. So that was my first taste of higher education administration. And I actually fell in love with it. And so from there, I went on to Marymount, and I got a job working in the provost's office at Marymount. And then I moved on and became the executive secretary to the president at Baruch College, who was then Kathy Waldron. So I've been at Baruch since 2004, an extremely long time. But I can say I've been at Baruch for as long as I have been because I really love this school. I love the people that I work with. I love the CUNY mission. And if you see in my bio, I am what they call a CUNY baby. I got my bachelor's degree at CUNY. I got my master's degree at CUNY. And also I went to school at Townsend Harris at Queens College. So I've been connected to CUNY for a very long time. In fact, my mother worked for CUNY. So through and through, just committed to the CUNY mission, public higher education. I believe that education really does elevate you in so many different ways, not just, getting a job, but really just informing how you view and see the world. And for that reason, I really love the lens of liberal arts because it allows you to just get a full view of everything possible. So that's kind of how I ended up in higher education, how I ended up at CUNY. Again, it wasn't purposeful, but I just kind of backed into it and I fell in love with it. Does it answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, if you could just go into, okay, so you were at Baruch for, so you've been at Baruch for quite some time. How did you fall into the HEA program? And then also secondly, could you kind of go over what your role is as Chief of Staff? Mainly because in higher ed administration, I think a lot of us tend to think about student-facing roles a lot, but not necessarily staff roles or what the employee roles are within, the workings of higher education as well.
Okay, no problem. So I'll start with the role of Chief of Staff because that will go into how I ended up in the master's program. So I had been executive assistant to the president at Baruch. And there was some shifting in administration, and the then President Mitchell Wallerstein had needed a chief of staff, and he came to me and said, "I think you can do this job." And I did the one thing they tell you not to do. I was like, "Really? Are you sure you want me to do this?" And it's a matter of that little moment of self-doubt, but I knew coming in, I worked in an office for a very long time. And over the course of time that I've been at Baruch, my portfolio really expanded quite a bit. So it was an easy transition to move into the role of Chief of Staff. So to give you a view of what it means to work in a president's office, what it means to be the Chief of Staff, it really is an opportunity to see the full view of things. When you work in higher education, as some of you have been in some of these classes, they're very specific silos. It can be student affairs, it can be enrollment management, it can be finance. Now, when you're working in a president's office, when you're a leader at that level of the entire campus and see how everything interconnects with everything. And so in that sense, it's my job to know everything that's happening on campus. And what that means basically is it's all down to relationships, connected with individuals, having to understand how what's happening in student affairs could impact enrollment management, ultimately could impact, the financing of the school and then the operations. So it's understanding all of that and being able to bring everyone to the table to really come together to make decision-making that really brings the entire college up to the same level, all of this, I guess, all together, if that makes sense. So it's just about, it looks at the interconnectivity. And so I'll give you an example. When we look at strategic planning, you're not just looking at what one thing is going, how one division is going to impact something. It really is how all of these divisions have to come together to meet a mission of the organization itself. And so working as chief of staff, I have to, work on behalf of the president. I'm liaison to so many different offices and individuals across the campus. I do information gathering. It's about leading strategic initiatives, whatever that initiative is that the president has in mind. I think strategic planning has been one of my favorite projects to be able to help spearhead on behalf of the president, because it really does impact the forecasting of the school's success, if that makes sense. You have the mission, you have the vision, and you're coming up together to create the goals that will bring the college forward. And ultimately, the goal really is to ensure student success, to make sure that we have students who are having an impactful experience and then graduating to go on to impact the world around them. So I hope that answers a little bit of your question. And if people want me to go into more detail, I'm happy to do so if I, glossed over something in particular.
Yes, absolutely. Just to echo that. If anyone has any questions, of course, this is meant to be an informal conversation to get to know Kenya about her work. Please feel free to put questions in the chat or raise your hand should you have any questions that come along. I have a couple of preset questions already, so I'll move on to the next one just in case we can get people start typing. So how has your career or outlook in higher ed changed as a result of COVID over the past year or in remote work?
Okay, so when COVID happened, it was very sudden. We were not prepared for it as an institution, as a university system, I think as an industry, higher education overall. When you talk about change management, this was instantaneous. And so we came into a situation as leaders really having to hit the ground running. And so I would say the first couple of months were very stressful. I think the entire experience was exhausting for everyone because we had to really, some of the resources that we had at home. Breaking up, can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so how did COVID change my view of higher education or my career? I think for a lot of us working in higher education, the borders, the boundaries, they just ceased to exist. I think a lot of us were working all day, every day, 7 days a week. I remember sending emails to colleagues at midnight on a Friday and they were responding. But we did what we had to keep the college running and to make sure that our students were being taken care of, and also make sure that our staff were taken care of and our faculty. And so I think I emerged we're not completely out of the woods with COVID, but I think looking back on that 18, 20 months, what I learned is the importance, number one, of balance. Because as a leader, if you do not have balance in place, it impacts how you lead. It impacts the work that you do day to day. So balance is extremely important. What I also learned is that we need to build in plans for crisis management, for change management. And so I say all of you who are in these programs now, with the masters in higher ed, to really, if it's not being covered in your courses, to do the research around change management, not just in higher education, but also across the various industries. Because I think one of the things that we can do in higher education as an industry is to really glean from other industries and how they do things. And so we need to learn how to really be able to pivot during times of change. And we've seen that we had to quickly move in the face of COVID, but we are in a constant state of change right now. We call this a transition. And so everything that we do now will help us to emerge from this place where we are now, stronger and more focused on our collective vision. So I would say for me, COVID really made it necessary for me to, as a leader, learn how to pivot, learn how to forecast. And also I would say it made me look at professional development in a way that there are skills that I needed to really reinforce, that I needed to develop so that as we're going through this change, I'm learning, I'm growing how to be a better leader and how to better contribute to this, our institution during this particular phase that we're in. And I'll call it a phase, and hopefully it's not going to last much longer. So that's kind of what I learned. What I'll also say is for higher education as an industry, what I've learned is that we are not ready for change. Paul LeBlanc, who is the president of the SNHU, Southern New Hampshire University, he actually wrote a very good article that you might want to look up. It's around, the term is VUCA, which means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But he talked about how higher education as an industry is not ready for change. We're an industry, whereas we've operated in the same way for a few centuries. And what COVID has made us realize is that we really have to now think forward. As we looked at remote work, we're also looking at what does online education look like? What does hybrid education look like? How can we maximize this experience and also make it more accessible to our future students? So we're looking at how online education can still give those students, particularly you talk about freshmen, sophomore, as they come in, they need a more hands-on experience. But then as you become a junior, senior, even graduate students, that's where you can more easily pivot to online education. And also as an industry, we're now looking at the changing face of what our future students would look like. Perhaps in some of your classes, you talked about how the future student population will begin to change. We're looking at possibly more adult students. More adult students means they're working, they are going, they have families. And so they're going to need educational opportunities that are more accessible, and being able to provide hybrid programs allows for that. So that's kind of where I see higher education pivoting to, looking more so how we can use technology to maximize the educational experience and to reach different populations of students that we haven't before.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate your emphasis on, I feel like we all know in like higher ed that, we've been operating on a very centuries old, like ideals and everything like that. So the need to pivot, for the sake of our students. I actually want to kind of bounce that off to also say, do you see anything also pivoting in terms of what higher education professionals need when entering the field, let's say for the first time, or maybe even for like someone who's in like mid-career?
Repeat the question. Sorry.
So I guess what you were saying about how higher education needs to change for how we're taking in new students, I guess, what skills do you think higher education professionals would now need because of the shift that we've had from COVID and from remote work?
Okay. I would say that higher education professionals need to enter the workforce as lifelong learners. Getting a master's degree is great, but that's not where your education ends. I think you need to constantly be pursuing professional development wherever possible. May it be through some of the professional organizations like NASPA. There's like, a lot of acronyms. There's NAPAHE, which is the National Association for Presidential Assistance in Higher Ed, very long name. Then there is NADOHE, that's the National Association for Diversity Officers in Higher Education. I guess what I'm saying is there are a lot of professional organizations within higher education that provide professional development opportunities. I think you want to be constantly learning. When you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, and you're able to contribute to your department, to your organization with a particular perspective and expertise that you may not have had first coming in. I think go in with the knowledge that you are going to constantly be pursuing development and growing within your roles. You don't want to stay stagnant also. But in pursuing lifelong learning, when you have times like these, when there's times of change, times of crisis, you are able to pivot a lot quicker than you would have not having some of that added knowledge that you have been able to acquire through development, if that makes sense. I would say you need to also have the mindset that we are living in a complex world. Nothing is going to stay stagnant. And so you need to be able to I keep using the term pivot, but I can't think of a better word, whereas things are constantly changing. So when things change, you cannot let that flummox you. One of the things that you need to realize is you have to be able to lead through change. You can, enter change as a victim as it's happening to you, which is you are giving away all of your power. Change can be happening around you, whereas you are not claiming your power at all. But if you're able to lead through change, that means you're going to take the power that you have in order to move forward. And I guess also you look at the lens, whereas always look at where you do have influence, where you can have impact, while recognizing the things that you have no impact over, but you're going to focus on the things that you do have influence over, if that makes sense. I think agility, I think is a term that I'm looking for. Agility is extremely important as a higher education leader as well. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, okay, I actually have a question coming in from our chat. So thank you, Jasmine. So with the amount of constituents that exist in higher education landscapes, or students, faculty, staff, funders, external, how do you engage each faction and or manage several competing priorities at once?
Okay, so that's kind of, I guess, the multiple stakeholders question. I think that's where that leader lens come into place, whereas you have to understand the needs and the concerns of all of the constituents. You need to understand how everything that we do is intertwined as an organization. Again, looking at that lens of systems thinking. So whatever decision you're making, you have to understand how it's going to impact each and every one of those constituents. I think also it's important to bring people to the table. So you're not making decisions in the background, so in a vacuum, sorry. So if you are going to make a decision that impacts students, you have students at the table, you have faculty at the table, you have administrators who are on the front line who handle student services at the table to understand how all of these entities will be impacted by the decision that you're making. So I think it's really important to have a lens of collaborative leadership. Bring everyone to the table, because sometimes sometimes you don't know everything, and you're able to hear the perspectives and the contributions of the other stakeholders, because they may bring something to your attention that you were not aware of. So you're making informed decisions whenever possible. I think as leaders, you do your best to make the decision that's going to be the best decision for everyone. But that's not always the case. I think as a leader, you're going to make some very difficult decisions that not everyone's going to be happy about. And that's something that you kind of have to learn to live with. I think when you talk about working with multiple stakeholders, I think a good example is going back to the strategic planning process, where you are engaging every single constituent to understand what the needs are, what the concerns are, and also to develop a collective vision that you all will work towards together. So I would say, if you're trying to make decisions that impact all the stakeholders, have them at the table to have those conversations. Jasmine, did it answer your question? Do you want me to do a deeper dive into anything?
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, awesome. Okay, so we're gonna start taking questions from the audience. So Storm, I see you have your hand up, so feel free to unmute and ask away.
Hi, so you spoke about being a lifelong learner. So I just wanted to hear about what inspired you to do a doctorate, and if you can tell us a little bit about the process and your experience with the whole, your experience with the whole process, to see how it helped you professionally and your goals and how it applies to everything.
Okay, absolutely. So pursuing a doctoral degree, I had a boss who kind of mentored me towards that, in the sense that he said to me, I see you going very far, but if you're going to stay in higher education, you kind of need that doctoral degree, particularly if you're looking to become a college president. You really need to have that doctoral degree. That was one thing that I started thinking about. Also, there was the course, what is the name of it? It's Research for Education Administrators. Am I botching it up? So that course I took with a professor who's no longer here now, Rachel Smith, but she was amazing. She made that subject so exciting. And it was hard to believe that. So it was actually, if you've taken a class before, or if you're going to take the class, so you're learning basic research methodology, and they start with, I think, qualitative for the first half of the semester, and then you move on into quantitative. So I got a good sense for both methodologies, and I really was drawn more towards qualitative, because with qualitative, you're allowing your participants to really shape the narrative. They're telling, they're voicing the experience. Whereas I personally find with quantitative, sometimes you're interpreting data, but it's not the voice of the individuals who are really being impacted. So between my boss, my then boss trying to nudge me that direction, and also learning more about research itself, I became open to the idea of a doctoral program. And if it's something that you're interested in, I would say do as much research as possible. There are two different types of doctoral degrees that you can get. There's the EDD and there's the PhD. And there is a fundamental difference, whereas the PhD tends to focus on traditional methodology. I'm in an EDD program, particularly at Northeastern, which this particular program focuses on action research. So with action research, there are two different cycles of research that you're doing. The first cycle of research is the typical methodology, which is you're doing focus groups, your interviews, surveys, what have you. But then you're taking the findings of that research, and you're determining what is the problems, what are the things that are emerging from that research. And your cycle 2 is spent trying to implement a solution to that problem. A phrase that my dissertation chair uses a lot is "so what, now what?" So the "so what" is that data that you found in the first cycle. The "now what" is, now that you have that information, what are you going to do with it? So to give you an example, Storm, I was focusing particularly on the professional experiences of women of color higher education administrators. So I did focus groups, I did interviews, and based on those findings, my second cycle is now focused on creating a pilot peer mentorship program for women of color higher education administrators. So that's that's how EDDs can be slightly different. They're more action oriented. There's a practical piece to it, whereas a PhD, a lot of it is spent with a theoretical. So to your point, before I landed at Northeastern, I looked at several different doctoral programs. I actually found people through LinkedIn and said, "I see that you graduated from this program. Can you tell me about your experiences?" And I actually came across a lot of people that had a lot of positive things to say about the Northeastern program. And that's how I landed there too. Also, when you're looking at doctoral programs, you need to look at how much it's going to cost. There are some programs whereas you're looking at a second mortgage. There are other programs whereas it's manageable if you can get a scholarship, if you can get grants, or if you're able to do a payment plan. So those are some of the things you really need to look at. Also, what is it that you want to focus in on in particular for the doctoral program? Now, because I had gotten a degree in higher education administration, I personally did not want to go for a doctoral degree in higher ed. I wanted to find a doctoral program that would allow me to supplement or complement the foundation of the master's. And so I went with a program that was focused in on organizational leadership. And that really has had a positive impact on the work that I do day to day, because it goes back to that systems thinking, seeing the organization as a whole and all the parts that come together. And through that, I've actually been very focused in on organizational culture, organizational communications, and also as an organization, how mission, vision, values really drives what we do and how we do it, and how it impacts all of the stakeholders and the constituents. So I'd say really do some research on the type of program you think you might want. And there are a lot of them out there. There are some that are in person. There are a lot that are online. But do the research, do the comparison, talk to whoever you can who's been in a program to really understand what that experience is on the ground. And also, when you go to the orientations, you go to the, the open houses, you're going to see the view of the program that the administrators want you to see. But that's when you find the students who've actually been in the program, so you get the real deal about what the experience is in that program. Does that answer your question, Storm?
Yes, thank you so much. That was very informative.
Okay, sorry, was it too much? Am I a little passionate about
No, it was perfect. Thank you so much.
That was great. Thank you so much. Actually, Kenya, when you said take out a second mortgage, I'm pretty sure I saw everyone's screen cringe a little bit, which was hilarious. But no, I mean, it's the reality. Unfortunately, that's what we're, the money unfortunately comes with it. I saw Mia have her hand up. Mia, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Yes, hello. Thank you. Hi, Kenya. Thank you for sharing your information. And I second everything you mentioned with the EDD, because I've just completed mine last year at St. John's University.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And I think I don't know if you know Christy Perez.
Yes.
Yes.
Very well.
I think you guys, I remember an event with you and her, I think a couple of years ago or a year ago, I'm not sure, but yeah. My question deals with, so being that I have my doctorates, prior to that, I've spent 10 years in K-12, and you mentioned being able to pivot and develop new skills. My question is how to do that pivot, because I find like the past year has been a little difficult, especially since I've like established myself in the K-12 level, working with teachers, coaching, teaching myself. So how do you, if you want to go into higher ed, pivot when you don't have that experience in higher ed, but you still have the experience in education, and you gain more skills as a researcher. And for me, I went back. First, I started part-time, but then I got the fellowship because, as you mentioned, it could be costly. So I got a fellowship where it afforded me the opportunity to go full-time and have my tuition paid for. So yeah, how do you do that pivot into higher ed when you have a background in K-12?
I think the first step is to really explore, where do you see yourself landing in higher education? Because there are so many different areas that you could go into. Student affairs, enrollment management, there's the operations side. So what I would suggest first doing is just go into higherjobs.com and start looking at job descriptions. What are the job descriptions out there? What are the skill sets, the job responsibilities that really speak to you? There's an exercise that I always encourage people to do, and I call it career strategic planning, right? So you're going to take your current resume or CV, and compare it to the job that you want. You say you pull a job, I want to be assistant provost. So pull the job for assistant provost, right? Create one column in Excel, whereas you're going to then delineate all of the responsibilities, the skill sets that are necessary for that role as assistant provost. And I'm just making this up. Then in the second column, you're going to take all of your experience that you have on your resume, and you're going to line it up with all of the responsibilities for the ideal job that you want. And what you're looking for is the gaps. Where are the gaps? Where you need to fill in the gaps. So I did this exercise a few years ago, and so I would say I needed more experience in strategic planning, for a particular role that I was looking at. And so I actually found a course at, I think it's the American Management Association in Strategic Planning. It was like a 2-day course. And so I took that course, and it just gave me a better foundation, a better lens of strategic planning. So this gives you an example of what you need to do when you talk about lifelong learning. It's really figuring out, if I want to get from A to B,
she cut out.
Yeah.
What did it mean?
Oh.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Okay, so so really is understanding what are the skills that you need to acquire, and then going out there, finding development opportunities. Sometimes it's just identifying a mentor who can help you to build out that skill set as well. But I think the most important thing is to identify the transferable skills. So you're not saying, K through 12, I think it's very easy to transfer to the work of doing that you could be doing in like student affairs in particular, when you think about it. So it's doing that little exercise. It's also doing informational interviews with people who are doing the job that you want. So you schedule those interviews, you're asking those questions, how did you get, to where you are? What are the skills you think are necessary? So it's things like that. Is also connecting to professional organizations that can help guide you through some of that work that you need to do in order to get to where you want to be, if that makes sense. Does it answer your question, Nia?
Yes, it does. I'm typing up all the notes.
Okay.
So long. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm jotting down everything.
Okay.
Okay. So you said also like identifying, once you do that, identifying someone who maybe has that position and maybe doing an interview with them and seeing what it entails and what it's. Okay.
Yeah, do all of the above.
Okay. Okay. Will do. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So Monica, I see that you put a question in the chat. I just want to know, do you want to unmute and ask it, or do you want me to go ahead and shout it out?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead and ask.
Okay. So Monica is asking, education administration here with almost all admin and operational responsibilities. And I found
I'm sorry, I meant executive assistant.
Oh, executive assistant. Sorry about that. So admin and operational responsibilities, and I found it difficult to make the leap to more managerial or substantive duties. Was there something you did, or do you have any suggestions based on your experience?
Yes. What I did was I took on projects. I volunteered for projects. Wherever there was an opportunity to learn something different, to learn more, I volunteered for it. So when I first started at Baruch, I could tell you I had a 7-line job description. And by the time I pivoted to chief of staff, it was 1.5 pages long. So you are taking on extra work, but first and foremost, people, you get on the right administrators' radars. You're showing them what you can do. So next time there's another project, they'll say, hey, let's call on Monica. Monica was great at doing X, Y, Z. So it's also a form of networking in that sense. And so take on extra projects where possible. If you can't get a seat at the table, if you can get a seat by the table, so you're hearing the decision-making that's happening, you're becoming connected to the decision makers, and also you're hearing the decision processes. Working in higher education, there are a lot of meetings that you can attend because of the Open Meetings Act. Maybe it's faculty senate, maybe, at our school we have general faculty. Get in the room and hear what people are saying so that you can be part of the conversation as well. And if there are
lost you for a second, hold on.
Opportunity doing my doctoral work, a lot of the women that I've connected with through that work really talk so much about putting yourselves in the right spaces in order to be noticed, in order to connect with the right individuals, and also to take on those extra responsibilities so that you are showing what you're capable of doing. And in doing that, you do have opportunities, if not to move up where you are now, somewhere else, because when you're taking on those extra duties, that's something that goes on your resume. So you can say that you did X, Y, Z. It might have been connected with your core job, but it's still a project that you worked on. If there are opportunities for you to sit on committees, I would say do that as well. So if it's possible to let your immediate supervisor know that, look, I'm interested in doing more, there are opportunities, and just keep an ear on the ground for things that are happening on the campus, particularly if there are like some college-wide committees that you can connect to. So those are the things that I kind of did in order to move out of that admin assistant role. I know it is a difficult niche to get out of, but you really have to kind of push yourself out of the comfort zone also in order to pursue some of those things. Does that answer your question, Monica?
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have time for a couple more questions. So if anyone wants to unmute or raise your hand, please feel free. I'm just screening around for any raised hands or any unmutes.
While you're looking for questions, I have a question for you guys. If you don't mind, I'm going to flip the script for
Go ahead.
So one of the classes that I took that I absolutely loved, and I don't know if they offer it still, is I think it was the Managing and Leadership in Higher Ed course. Did they still offer that? It was an elective when I had taken it. That class I fell in love with because it turned things onto you. With that particular class, and if they offer it, I say jump on top of it, because you got to look at yourself as a leader. You had to identify areas where you wanted to grow. You also had to look at profiles of leaders. And do research around the work that they did. How did they get to where they were going? And I really love that class because it also made me look outside of CUNY world, which I think is extremely important. What I would say also, when you're looking at development opportunities, if you ever have the chance to go to the conference, it's called the annual meeting of the American Council on Education. The first time that I went to that conference was eye-opening because I got to meet with and hear from higher education administrators at college universities across the nation. So you become connected to the national conversation around the things that are happening in higher education. And you get to see how you're not so different, at the organization that you're at. We all have the same problems. We go about them a little differently in solving them, but it really did open my eyes to national trends. So if you can't get to the conference, you can go to their website. Sometimes they have, links and videos to some of the excerpts of the things that are happening at the conference. And they also have very good research publications on their website as well. So anyway, turning that question back to you, is there a class that you've taken so far that you have found to be impactful? Not yet?
I feel like
I could say that.
Go ahead, Giselle, it's all you.
I was gonna say that one class that actually, I'm from the MPA program, so I'm not higher education. I'm actually master's in public administration. And one class which actually really, I think, focused my goal to be a graduate student was, where do I want to go? Was managing diversity. Well, right now, that's one of the courses I'm taking, which kind of informed me about managing diversity in higher education, actually, with Dr. Andrew Martinez. I took a higher education class, and it's been really eye-opening because it's shown me how much diversity is important in higher education. And I think I've never really looked at higher education from that perspective. Like, I've always been interested in DEI in regards to, like, I work for the city, so in regards to, like, government agencies. But higher education is its own world. So it actually showed me a lot. And it, I would say, made me more open-minded about how many things we can do within higher education. And, you know, being a graduate student, what can we do as students to really bridge that gap between administration and students, I would say. So I would say that was really one course that was very impactful. It's really impactful right now for me in my coursework. And obviously I took racial dialogue with Professor Aries and Professor Jarvis, which I think was amazing. I think it should be mandatory and everyone should take it. And I told them to take their show on the road to just do conferences, because I think that course really impacted me, I think personally and professionally. Really great course.
Giselle, to your point, you just made me think also that regardless of what program you're in, I would advise to take electives in the other program. Yes, because I was in a master's in higher ed program, but I took a number of courses from the MPA program, like policy analysis, which is extremely interesting and translates very well into higher ed as well. You know, you have to understand the policies in order to change them, in order to improve them. So that was a really good class.
I definitely agree. I'm in that course right now, and you are right. It, like, taking the course in higher education, like I said, definitely opened my eyes. Just because I didn't know about some of the issues that we're talking about now. I lived through them, but I didn't know they were issues at the time when I was an undergraduate student in a PWI. So I would say that you're right, but I'm almost done now. So I'm like, oh darn, I probably should have expanded a little bit more. But thank you, I appreciate that.
Kenya, what was the name of the course that you said that you had taken?
I'm probably botching it up, but I feel like it was management and leadership.
We had a class, it's public and nonprofit management. And
that's not, I took that one, but that's not it.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that the class that you're talking about is offered, or maybe it's offered under a different name, but actually Nicole, hi Nicole, right? She actually shouted out that public and nonprofit management was the class for her. Okay,
great. But I took nonprofit management also as well, because if you are looking to move up the ranks in higher ed, it's also important to understand governance structure. And I think the nonprofit management class really helped with that, because you have to work with board of trustees, understand their role that they play within the organization. And so that's another set of stakeholders that you have to interact with.
Yes. Nicole, did you want to add on to your experience with public and nonprofit management?
Thank you. And Ms. Kenya, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us and sharing your experience. For me, taking that class helped me when I'm structuring my paper. Like, you have to give the history, you have to give your, dive into the analysis of the issue, and from how the organization is structured and managed, and like you said, and just when you highlight the issue that you identify, it makes sense when you've done the history and the structure and the, who's in leadership and what their mission and goals are. So for me, that was very, very helpful. And I'm sad that the managing and leadership class that you mentioned sounds like something would have been perfect, but we didn't have that when I was there. But thank you again. This has all been very helpful. If I could just ask one question. Sure. While I have the floor, how would you support, like in a higher ed environment, how would a mature student, someone who is coming back to school, is juggling family responsibilities, work responsibilities, as well as their graduate degree. Like, what would be your, I guess, advice for that student on how best to keep moving forward and keep chipping away at their goal of their degree?
I would say allow ample space for grace, especially in these days that we're living in, whereas sometimes we just put a lot of pressure on ourselves, more so than the world does. We feel like we create these expectations that we feel that we have to live up to. And I say, first and foremost, put down the expectations of other people, because that's a burden in and of itself. But then lay aside some of the expectations that you have for yourself, and really step back and look at everything that you're accomplishing. And it can feel like a lot of pressure. But every step, even if it's a small step, is towards the goal that you have for yourself. I was a single mother, and I was raising a kid while trying to go to school, and commuting between Queens and Manhattan. It was just a lot. So you just have to recognize where you are in the time of things, and don't compare yourself to other people. If you need to take one course a semester, that is one course closer to the goal that you want. You might not be able to take 2 courses during every single quarter, and then try to take 3 courses during the summer. Just allow space for yourself, so that you can have that balance. I say, we all joke about work-life balance because it doesn't exist, but it's something to work towards. in that sense, just recognize where you are. Don't compare yourself to anyone else, and just take it one step at a time. And if that one day that of all the things you accomplish is one thing you don't accomplish, is added to the list for tomorrow.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think we have time for about one more question, and I'm going to give it to Renee. What's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hi, Renee.
Hi.
Good to see you again.
Oh, it's great to see you.
Renee, your microphone.
I think your mic went out.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. I was saying how much I love everybody on this call. I just kind of wanted to add to what we were talking about before, and the classes that we were taking that actually helped with our career. Definitely the public and nonprofit management course that helped me with a lot of strategies and putting myself into a leadership position and finding what my leadership style was. Neil Hernandez is great at his whole layout and format of his class. I also wanted to mention that I took the program evaluation. And I took that course because I wanted to understand how I can better find what the problems were or what the challenges were of a program to help better the program for students, for administrators, for anybody at the top levels, and kind of help that to trickle up, down, left, right. So in higher education, that has actually helped me in my position right now. And I think that's an elective. It is an elective in the MPA, I believe. Program. I'm HEA doing a whole bunch of MPA electives. So yeah, definitely taking those different courses has helped me throughout my journey so far. And your advice, Kenya, it was amazing. The last time we spoke, I did everything you told me, and it's gotten me to this point here. So awesome. Golden advice.
Awesome.
That's Renee's hand up here. Okay, so does anyone have any last questions? I can round out with the last question too, but I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to ask our expert today. Okay, so I guess just to close it out, Kenya, so what are you currently working on in and towards your career? Is there anything that you're looking forward to seeing come to fruition in your position or in the industry at all?
Well, I'm looking forward to finishing this doctoral degree. Hopefully by August, I will be Dr. Lee. And thank you. And with that, the work that I've done, I see myself publishing. I would love to adjunct maybe for this program, because I think there's an opportunity to build in that leadership development component in the program. But writing, teaching, continuing to move forward as a leader in higher education. Like I really love working in higher education, the mission that we have. I think education is extremely important. Access to education is extremely important. You've heard me talk a lot about growth and lifelong learning. And so I feel that being able to support others in achieving that is extremely important. I think for myself, I'm probably looking at what is my next degree going to be also, you know, maybe something a little lighter than a doctoral degree. I don't know. So those are the things that I'm looking towards right now in the immediate future, and just trying to survive this pandemic.
Aren't we all? Well, thank you so much. We are about to close out the top, almost to the 2 o'clock hour, which right on time. So thank you so much, Kenya. It was a joy having you. Thank you everyone who's joined us today for our alumni career chat. I really hope that you're all having a great rest of your week. I will send out a wrap-up email and a copy of this recording out by the end of the day today, once we get it on our YouTube. So yeah, everyone, have a great rest of your day and be well.
Thank you. And if you all want to connect, I'm in LinkedIn.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.